So, welcome to the Identity After the Uniform project. Real conversations about military transition, identity, rebuilding, and the impact life after service even can have on both the individual and the family unit. So the project exists to explore what really happens after the structure of the military changes. So it's not just externally, but predominantly internally. No performance, no pretending, just honest conversations that hopefully help people feel understood and a lot less lonely. So isolation is key. So I'm here today with Andy. Thank you so much for joining us, Andy.
Yeah, thank you for the offer and the invite.
No, truly appreciated. So I'm going to shoot straight into it for our listeners. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your connection to the military?
Yeah, I wasn't actually in the military, but I was born into the military in the 60s, born in a British military hospital. And through my youth, I was obviously my father, he served for 24 years, so he did a full length of service. So I travelled with him, and as a full family unit, my sister and my mother. Ultimately, he left the service in 1978. So that's where my part in it comes.
What was his cap badge, if you don't mind me asking?
He was REME.
Oh, was he? So did you go as a family? Where were you predominantly based, or was you constantly moving?
We constantly moved. I was born in Germany. We then moved back to the UK, Catterick. Then we moved to Scotland. Then we moved back to Germany. Then we moved back to the UK to Catterick. Then we moved. We stayed for a short while with my grandparents. Then we moved to Hong Kong. Then we moved from Hong Kong back to Newcastle. Then we moved that's where my father he ended his service. My sister did a bit more travelling. She's 2 years older than me.
Yeah. So one could say that you didn't really have one static home.
No, that was a very nomadic lifestyle.
What did you think that the military life looked like for you back then as a child growing up? How did you personally feel at the time?
It was quite strange because you made friends at school, but you didn't make friends for life because you just up and that was it. It was lift and shift basically. We didn't tend to move with the military unit that the attachment was with. So my dad served, and he went with either Queen's Royal Irish or the 912th. So it wasn't as though when we moved, the kids from that I'd been to school with moved with us. So I never followed another schoolmate around. So that was quite strange. Making friends at school, and then obviously if I went to a local, a non-army school, it was different curriculums to learn.
How did it impact you though, constantly having to start over again every time you went to a new school?
It was rough. It was really rough. I know as you got older, when you're younger, it's easy to integrate as the younger you are. But as you start getting older, you're new kid in school. People want, they want to pick a fight. They want to, for the lads, back in the 70s, they want to pick a fight. So you think you're big and think you're tough. You think you're, and that was something that happened. So you'd end up having 3 or 4 fights. Just they wanted to, make sure that you're in your right place within the school. Yeah. So you take a beating sometimes for no reason, and obviously part of my bringing up was that you don't just hit somebody for nothing. You know what I mean? And it's I was brought up with certain rules around that, where in the civilian life it wasn't like that. It was a different rule of engagement. So yeah, it was, yeah, you had to try and make friends, but then you had to learn the rules of engagement. So everything I'd been taught, I had to unpick. You also had to learn, potentially, if you wanted to mix in, you've got to learn the local language as well.
No,
So
I appreciate what you're saying, because I know, looking back at my children, because I was attached am, so they came with me everywhere I went. And I think predominantly for my eldest, he really struggled making friends, because he felt like if he was going to make a friend, he'd be moved on. So what was the point of making friends if he's going to have to keep moving? That was kind of his takeaway on it. And it was really hard for him. So I did feel, because I knew that I didn't want to keep moving him round, but at the time I had no choice, if that makes sense.
yeah, and yeah, and it doesn't. It makes for, you know, back then it made for quite a lonely place. You know, for individuals. Maybe not so much now, because we have got, obviously we've got the internet, but let's say there's different meeting people, and you know, I still don't have a wide friendship group, and I think that was, I'm 60 now, and I still struggle to do that. It's, you know, if you're my friend, it's you're in a very small group of people. You know, it's a very select group of people. So I don't know subconsciously whether that's still part and parcel of that. It could happen, but it's only me that it could happen to.
No, I understand.
I would have to be the one that caused it.
Yeah. Do you find that your connection to the military, with your father serving, helped with your identity of who you are today in a positive or a negative way?
When I was younger, I was really proud, you know, of my dad. You know, my dad, his service. Then I went through a period where, you know, I was really angry, and because as I got older, I went to school, and the family unit split up. I was really angry. But then as I got older, you know, I started, when I did certain things, and as I progressed in my career, I didn't do very well at school, and that was a lot because we moved around. In my final years, that the curriculum totally changed, so I moved from Newcastle to Yorkshire. We were out of the forces then, but you know, had we have relocated into Yorkshire rather than Newcastle for my final years, I would have been on one curriculum in the really important years for myself. So, you know, I literally had to redefine myself, but the values that I'd had instilled in me through my upbringing, when I look back, I use them every day. You know, I really do, and it's something that the military, you know, has given me. You know, it's a strictness approach, you know, and it is a set of values, you know, that I still stand by. You know, if I see somebody getting bullied, I will step in. You know, I have done it at you know, my own risk before. Stepped in where, you know, somebody was attacking one of my, well, verbally at the point of attacking my member of staff, and I stepped in. You know, in there, there was a knife, but that was basically what I've been brought up to do. So, you know, I look at everything I break it all down into pieces, so I can see, you know, what is the next step, you know, what's the outcome going to be, how does it start off. So, and these are all things that, you know, I learned, and they're all things that when I look at it, that they all came from, you know, the military kind of, you know, the military kind of background. If you don't do this here, that there's going to go. So I've got to really reflect on it, and despite the upheaval side of things, the positives, there is it's a balance. When I look at, you know, people now on the street, I think actually you could have done with a bit of what I had, you know, growing up, to make you have a different perspective on life.
No, that makes sense. But you just something you touched on, because I understand where you're coming from with regards to the fact that you will always put others first. You'll step in harm's way if it meant that you're helping somebody else. Because I know when we were serving, we're very much used to that kind of high pressure environment. So we're always operating at that kind of high pressure. And I just wanted to clarify something, if that's okay. So you said, obviously, when your father left and you all settled down in Newcastle, there was the kind of separation after. So did your parents not stay together long after he left the forces, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, he left in 78, and by 81 they'd separated. So at the age of 14, 15, I became the man of the house. So I had another load of pressure put on me with that. So there was a break of, I think it was probably 3 or 4 years before I saw my dad again. And I didn't really, there was a lot of things growing up where, I can recall he was either on exercise, or he'd got other things he was having to do. He was involved in a lot of sport within the REME, he played basketball, volleyball, football, and such. And I can only ever recall him coming to one of the sports events that I ever did, in all of that. But when they split up and divorced, that was another additional pressure. And it was in my school years, and despite everything, at that time, it was it was something that really I could have done with some kind of help and support. It was a lot for a 15-year-old to try and deal with. My sister. Sorry.
So you had to grow up quite young then, didn't you? You had to take on certain roles at a very young age.
Yeah. It was literally, fend for yourself. I learned to cook. I could cook a full meal at 14-year-old, 13, 14-year-old. So I could do all that.
Wow.
I was fixing my mum's car. I was very self-sufficient. And again, that's something, at the time you think, well, this is not on, but you look at the positives now that, there's nothing that really, I can't put my hand to.
God bless you. Did he ever explain what he was going through when he left and why his mindset was a certain way by chance? If he didn't, it's okay. I'm just wondering if he ever opened up to how he actually felt when he was leaving.
No, not. He didn't really. He's passed away now, and but he never did. But I recall when he left. I mean, my dad, to me, everybody, well, the majority of people, the dad is the hero.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to aspire to be the dad. I just recall this big, strong man that he wouldn't back down from anybody. Well, he looked like that, and I quoted once, he looked like my dad. He got the same colour hair as my dad. He was the same height as my dad, but he wasn't my dad because he was crying. He was trembling. He was shaking, and he was stuttering. That wasn't my dad. And that was, the first signs of he had a mental breakdown in probably the first 6 to 8 months of leaving the forces, because he couldn't cope and adapt after that period. And then I'd have been probably 12, 13 years old. So that was difficult, because you just see this mountain of a man that's always told you, you don't cry, you don't you don't do, you don't cry unless there's a reason to cry for. That men don't cry, and yet you've witnessed it happen. It wasn't, that he didn't really open up, about it, but there was some instances that when he'd come home from work, he'd say, I heard conversations that he'd had with them, the parent kind of conversations where I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Just walked off. The mechanics have just can you believe it? The mechanics have just literally 4 o'clock's come and they've just put the tools down and gone home. And this customer phoned up wanting the car. They've just gone home.
Yeah.
And when my dad being Remy, he would have been expected, if that job had to, if it was a Land Rover or a Chieftain, that would have had to be done for it.
You're hearing it a lot though, because a lot of people that are first leaving and they're going into Civvy Street, they want to stay till the job's done, not work the 9 till 5. And that's probably a part of that transition, because they're not aware of it, because we're so used to getting paid 24/7. Now we're getting paid 9 till 5. And it's a case of we've got to change our whole mindsets of, you don't have to stay till the job's done. You stay till the end of the working day, go home, and it'll be there for you in the morning. And it's that kind of mindset. So I see where you're coming from with the conversations that you overheard and the things that went on. But I can relate more than, well, probably a lot of people relate, because the mental challenges did come for me when the uniform came off. So I wasn't the same person as I am here today as I was in the uniform. So I can understand why you see this figure of a man, this soldier, this man mountain, to a human.
Yeah. So it did really bother him, but it was till the day he passed. He passed away at 69, still working 40 hours a week, but he never left the job until he finished his day's work, even if that meant he didn't get paid. And that was the
so looking back, Andy, no, it's fine, honestly. So looking back now, what do you think stands out the most for you growing up in a military environment?
What stands is it's about it's yin and yang, because there was so much good stuff, the things that I saw and I got to appreciate, so many different things. Like, we lived in Hong Kong, and that was an eye opener in the 70s, where you see poverty as it was. We did a lot of work for an orphanage, and I saw people in Germany, in Hong Kong, actually appreciate my dad for who he was, a soldier.
Yeah.
I saw people, bowing and wanting to shake his hands, and respecting him in there. That really stood out for me. Then when I was old enough to realize that, when we came back to the UK in 73, 74, that how despised he was as a soldier in the army housing that we got, the married quarters that we were in Newcastle. The streets behind us it was a army housing and then council. The trouble that was between the two, the arm, the married quarters, and literally you'd got a war going on between the families, and that really stood out. That really does stand out. Why would we hate our own? And again, and it did go through through your schooling. You're big and tough because your dad's a soldier. But you even saw it from adults, coming around, actually coming around wanting to fight with the squaddies, and and that really did stand out. And the other thing is that, had any kind of thought process gone into where do you go next, or what does it look like, is the posting a little bit longer if for instance, such as the longer service people. So if there are certain regiments that do a longer service. As a rule, I think Remy is one that stands out. You get quite a few people that do the 20+ years in that. Potentially their children, if they get married, there's a potential in there that as they're coming to the end, maybe consider that their last 5 years or so, their children will also be at a point where that's their education.
GCSE years,
mine was really affected, not only by the move, the divorce also affected it, and I do believe that a lot of that was also to do with the mental state that happened. We ended up being a tight family unit that went into destruction over a 3-year period. That was including my sister. She just went astray. She went, it was literally as soon as we were out of this very, very controlled environment. We went to army schools. You did anything wrong, they told the CO your dad got marched on the parade square or whatever punishment. So you knew you were going to get a talking to when you came home. And my sister, she just went totally off. So as I say, our family ended up being a totally disenfranchised unit.
What do you think then, from everything that you've gone through and as a family unit, that you've taken forward, i.e. that's not what you want, that's not what you wanted in your adult life? So the choices you made growing up and saying, well, actually, I want to take that little bit of the military, but I don't want to take this. This is how I'm going to change. What patterns did you notice growing up that you actually said, enough's enough, this is what and who I want to be and why?
I bought my first house in 1988, I believe, and I still live there. I could have moved.
So you chose stability and not moving the family round.
I could have moved. I could have done that. And there was two things, because I thought I want to be able to buy my house, because again, I wanted financial stability, because I know that had impacted on my parents. I don't think there was a lot of financial advice and support given to my mum and dad when they were due to leave. I think the support was given to my dad, a bit of training, and off you pop. I don't think my mum was involved in any of that. So I really looked at it, and I've had to work hard. I've kept that kind of side of it, and I don't leave the job until the job's done. And I have that mentality, and it's the it's not the right mentality, but I have that is embedded in me, right down to I have worked 25 hours straight through on more than one occasion. That's because that is just born into me. I don't get into debt. Again, because I saw what debt can do. I saw the arguments, in the family unit. I saw that when they came out the army. One wanting something where really, mum wanting, something nice, and really you're stretching what you can get. When they move, they owed more than they actually, purchased the item for. You think, well, we've had that 3 years. So, I've really, done that. I don't want my kids to have to go through the kind of work that I did. To get.
I can't believe I'm going to ask this. Have you ever missed a sports day for the kids?
No. I
thought that would be a yes.
Yeah. I even took on managing the football team that my lad was in. The manager that started it off, he, for a personal reason, he just packed it in, and I did that despite me having a lower back problem with four bad discs and multiple other health problems, because I didn't like, my lad wasn't going to be let down. I've got a grandson. I go to his matches to watch that.
Yeah.
My daughter, not very sporty, but whatever she was involved in, I'd get involved in. And you have to make time, for all of that. Anything that they're interested in getting, really make a point of showing you're interested.
Sounds to me like you've compartmentalized. So I'm going to put in that box all the good things, and all the bad things are going in that box, and they're not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they do happen, but you've got to try and circumnavigate around them. Yeah, I've made mistakes as I've gone through some of the things, because I have the no quit attitude. Yeah, it's impacted medically on me, but hey ho, I'm still here. Multiple illnesses, but my house was paid for by the time I was 50. Don't have that stress on me.
Yeah.
Both my kids, they're doing quite well. They both got their own houses now. I've got one grandchild. Career wise, I managed to make it up to right up the ladder to a senior operations manager for a really big organization that works with unemployed and different contracts.
Wow.
And placing unemployed people back into employment, and was one of the highest performers with all of that. And I say that's coming from somebody that didn't achieve what they could have achieved had the last 4 years, 3-4 years of schooling been a bit more stable within all of that.
What do you think was your driver then? I know you said obviously from 15 you had to be like the man of the house, so to speak. So what was your driver to turn it all around and go, this is who I want to be? Because obviously up until that point at 15, you were very much a military family, military child. So everything you understood was around the military. How did you switch from being military to a civvy? How did you change that mindset?
Well, I tried to get at 16. I tried to get into the army, and I did the barb test, and I scored. It must have been 98%, because the last two people in the room, there was me and another guy who he'd done uni or whatever, and we were told there was two of us, and one of us had scored 98%. And the reason where there was only at the end of it, they said there's one regiment you can't get into, and that's you, Andy, because you haven't got a language behind you. You can get into every other one. So it pretty much meant that I'd done the 98%. Unfortunately, because of health, I didn't get through. I was colourblind. I got asthma and some chest problems when we lived in Hong Kong. And I'd also fractured both my knees, and an ankle before, in like 2-3 years prior to that. So that didn't bode well for me. So then I really just had to think about what I was going to do. So now I was a kid at 16, 17, didn't do well at school. Chucked on a YTS scheme, learned a bit of welding, did a bit of this, did a bit of that. Like working on cars, did a bit of work in a scrapyard, then got a job working in a window factory making windows.
Yeah.
And then somebody came in, the manager said, how come you 2-3 times faster than everybody? So I just get my head down now, and that's it. We've got a system. Well, can you show everybody else your system? And that's where, I process things, and I've always done that. I ended up through that being a supervisor of the, of the factory. Then I was headhunted. So I literally in that first job, I reduced the building time of a window by 50% by people following, my system. And it was simple as bits of bent metal. I just made jigs. So I didn't need to get my tape out. Just literally, it had to be a set size.
Command task would have been your forte then.
Yeah. So I just had bits of,
get it done.
That's it. So we did that. Then I was identified by somebody else in the company, came and poached me. And from there I just went upwards. Then I damaged my back. Ironically, in that same, the same game. I really enjoyed doing it because I got to a point where I was the person where anything technical came, I got that role. And it was good because I used both my mind and my body. I do like to be hands-on with anything. But when I hurt my back, one of the biggest factors that ever impacted me was my son. He was 4, coming up 5 at the time. I was off work for just over 2 years having physio.
Yeah.
And I dropped my son off at the nursery a couple of days a week. I remember having a conversation with him. And I said to him, "What do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to do?" He said, "Daddy, when I grow up, I'm going to get married and I'm going to send my wife to work." And that was a real defining moment in my life. That a 4 or 5 year old, that's a really true statement.
Wow.
It still sticks with me. I mean, then I'd have been 28, 29. I'd been written off by DWP. They said, we don't, we're not going to see you for another 10 years, but I wanted to work. Yeah. So I drove myself to it. I put myself through a college course. I did it, most of it home study. And I was fortunate enough to literally force somebody's hand into giving me a try. I said, give me an opportunity. Let me do the job for two weeks. I don't want any kind of pay. Let me do the job for 2 weeks. I'll pay my own fuel. I don't want anything. Just let me prove to you I can do it. And that was the start of a career in 1998.
Do you know what? It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because you said you looked up to your dad, the man in the uniform, the man mountain, and here's your son doing exactly the same with you, but actually he's also giving you a kick up the ass saying, "Come on, Dad."
Yeah.
Without even... That's what I mean. Yeah. It can't help but make you laugh because kids are just so direct. There's no filter. Yeah. I love it, especially when they're so young at that age. I can't even remember what I was doing at 4 or 5.
But,
wow.
but again, when you reflect on it now, if you think about it now, it's an opportunity to anybody serving to really take note of what the kids are saying.
Yep. I wish I'd done that when I served.
Yeah. And an opportunity now for, if any children of any serving members are watching, really think and think, is there something I really would like to say, or I would like an answer for? I don't know what, I didn't know why my dad joined the army until he passed away. And
what was his reason for joining?
Because his family life was horrible.
Yeah,
it was so disruptive. So he joined to get some stability. At 15, joined the Boys Army. Wow. And when a lot of people, when you hear them, that was it. So that became his life. So that became how you lived. The rules. They were very strict. Don't get me wrong. We weren't beaten as kids or anything. But my wife still struggles that. You're a bit, you're a bit harsh. But no, that's it.
Yeah. So reflecting on what we've been speaking about, because honestly, I could sit and talk to you for hours. So your dad, when he obviously got out, it sounds like he didn't realize what he had with regards to his children and his wife for that kind of stability factor. And you've made sure that you're part of your stability, part of your structure, your grounding is your family. Is that right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yes. My wife is, she's my rock. She has saved me so many times.
Bless her. If there's something you could tell somebody that's listening right now, be it a military child or a serving soldier or a spouse, what would the advice be?
If you need to discuss it, discuss it. Don't put it, I had it explained to me, your mind is like a backpack, your brain is like a backpack. Don't just keep putting things in that backpack, the little things. You've really got to get it out. You've really got to speak about it, because once that backpack's full, you're on self-destruct. So really, if there's something that needs talking about, talk about it at the earliest stage.
Yeah.
And it is really important. I've gone through, two bad periods in my life. One resulting in PTSD. I didn't know there was anything wrong with me, but my wife knew. She knew that there was something wrong with me. I think I did secretly, but I didn't want her being upset. So yeah, really, it's really important, and it is, and it is for the youngsters. Just let the parent know, because sometimes we are too busy to understand, too busy to listen. There's too much going on. I mean, I had an apology made to me a few months back about being told to stand up straight. Yeah, get your shoulder up, stand up straight, stand back. This is when we were in Hong Kong. And my mum said, I still feel bad about Hong Kong. I can't believe it that you're hunched forward. It's all because you got the asthma and the other chest problems. But in the military, right, it was stand up. That's CO there. You're not being slumped forward.
Yeah.
So there was all of that to contend with. But as I say, it's really important. Owning up. And being able to talk. Around that, and understanding. What it is that the problem is, and making sure that we're not holding back.
No, and I appreciate that, because I do think it's important to talk, especially when you're going through that kind of, sometimes you feel like you're doing it all on your own. So you shut off from the world, because fundamentally you want everyone to see this strength, and actually inside everything's crumbling. So you don't want to reach out and ask for help, because you think if you do, you're seen as weak. And actually it takes more strength to speak out than it does to hold it in. And I wish I'd learned that from the beginning. But I just want one last question. Sorry, I told you I could speak to you for hours. What gives you purpose, meaning, and direction today?
I just want to ensure that, well, not today really, that everything that I do has been revolved around others. I want to make sure that my wife is secure financially, protected, and the same for my kids. I'd never, and again, this is something that I probably should have worked on myself. I don't think about myself in any of the equations. And whether people say, well, you're stupid, you should always look at after you. So for me, I wanted to know that my wife is secure, and my kids, and that is what all my plans have been around, making sure that there's all that stability there. I think we've done a good job. The house is paid for, everything we've got, we own. Nobody can come knocking on our door. My kids are, they've they're earning good money.
Yeah.
You know, they've both got good partners. And
so does that mean your son didn't get a partner and ship her off to work then when he got married and he stayed at home?
no. Well, he's actually his partner's the boss, so didn't quite work out for him. Might have to challenge him on that.
I like it. Right, Andy. Honestly, thank you so much for giving up your time just to speak with me. Honestly, it means the world, not just to me, but hopefully to the listeners. So I'm Gemma Gardner, creator of the Identity After the Uniform project. These conversations are raw, honest, and incredibly important because they help people realize they're not alone. So if today's conversations resonated with you in any way, I'd really appreciate your support. So like, subscribe, and comment below, because let us know where you're watching in the world and how this resonated if you want to, or just reach out with us. Because right now, the only way we get these stories to the people who truly need them is through word of mouth, through the sharing, the comments, and the subscribing. And these stories matter, these conversations matter. And this is exactly why we do what we do. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you're not alone. Your story can be someone else's lifeline. We're building a community of real stories, real people, real impact. Together, we break the silence and we build a stronger future. So thank you. And thank you, Andy.
Thank you.